are live. Hi, everybody. This is Anne-Margaret. We are talking today to Jeannette Prostowich. I've known her for many, many years, and she is one of our contributing authors. Many of you know that I've put together this compilation of 52 different authors, one for each week of the year. Who knew? But that's just kind of how it worked. And all of these authors are people from my life that I just adore, I respect, and all of them have beautiful stories of resilience, and they all contributed 1,000 words or less to the book. So it starts every week of the year. This weekly guide to raise your vibration starts with a personal story by one of these authors. And drum roll, thank goodness she's my very first one, because we have a history and we know each other, but she's the very first author for this book. So you're number one. The book starts in spring, so it's broken up into four different chapters, or four different sections rather, with 13 chapters each, and they each represent a season of the year. And I wanted to do it that way so that people didn't feel like they needed to go through sequentially from start to finish, that they could just pick something here or there. But you are actually our very first story listed in the book. And I'm so thrilled because it's just such a gorgeous story of resilience. That's the chapter's theme. And each week now, we're going to be speaking to each one of these authors to hear what it was like for them, why they chose that story, who are they, how you can stay in touch with them, because they're super inspiring and you're going to want to follow them and learn. I mean, many of them are teachers. They have such an array of wealth to give you. So I wanted to say, welcome, Jeannette. Thanks for being my first live with these authors who've contributed to this book. And I would just say, can you just tell us a little about yourself, like how we know each other and how you became a part of this process?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me, Anne, and also thanks, Anne-Margaret, and thanks for having me ask me to be part of the book. Something I'd never thought I'd be part of in my life, to be honest with you. But how we know each other is through, I think, the Giving Tree that in Astoria. I started out teaching kids yoga many years ago, and now I subsequently got my 200-hour teacher training. I did that, and I currently finished a 300-hour. So I teach prenatal yoga, I teach postnatal yoga, I teach vinyasa yoga, and I also am really passionate about pelvic floor yoga. And I do, teaching families, right? Teaching baby and me and young toddlers.
And you have some experience with them yourself, yes?
Yes, I do. I have a 12-year-old daughter. So I think all the old stuff is easy now, and I'm just sort of navigating that new territory of queendom. So
yeah. And you used to teach for us at the Giving Tree in Astoria, Giving Tree Yoga Studio, the kids programs and be integrated in the community. So we so appreciated having you teach there too.
Yeah, grateful.
So awesome. Well, and what I find so fascinating is when I asked you to do this, I had no idea what story you're going to tell, obviously. And I want to ask you, like, why did you select this particular story? Because this story, it's entitled My Strong Family. And it's a beautiful story about the people who have overcome some serious obstacles in their life. And you chose to share that story with this book. And we chose the theme of resilience to go with your particular week because that's what this book is all about. It's like this book has been something I didn't even know what I was doing when I started it. I just had the lockdowns start to happen in 2020 in March and just thought we need to get people to focus on their resiliency and stories of what they've already overcome so they remember who they are. Like, I think that's one of our greatest challenges. And so much of this book, even like the fact that you're the first story, that wasn't planned. That just kind of worked its way out because I've matched chakras with every story and exercises for people to process the teachings that each human has shared through their own personal stories. But what I find so fascinating is that your theme is resilience, and that is the real core focus of how I even started this book in the first place. So will you just share, why did you choose to share this particular story over all the other ones you could have picked?
Well, interesting. I mean, when I first started writing, I thought, well, what am I going to write about? What am I going to write about? And I had a pretty significant loss in my life. My older sister, who's about 15 years older than me, passed away almost 6 years ago from complications of ovarian cancer. And that was really heavy because she was my confidant. She was older than me, so she was like a second mother. She took care of me and my twin sister for many years, and she doted on us until she had her own kids. So initially I thought I'm going to write about that, but then I was like, well, this is like more of a story about her struggle, and there's not really a lesson in here. And my nephew at the time had just finished my 12-year-old nephew at the time. He turned 13 while he was in the hospital, had some pretty significant health issues. Um, he was diagnosed with a rare condition called HLH. He was on a ventilator in the hospital, and his parents were told he was going to die. And subsequently, you'll read the story, people.
Yes, yes. Don't give too much away. Don't give too much away.
But subsequently, he was diagnosed with
yeah.
lymphoma. And we're just, entering COVID. We're in the thick of COVID, and he just got some great news as we were entering COVID. So what was horrible for some people, we being to experience, he was be able to like breathe a sigh of relief. So the one main theme that I found through all these things was the resilience. I just started writing, and my sister's struggle made me think about my dad's struggle, and then it really led to my nephew's struggle, and how they kept going and how that inspired me. So and watching them survive what they had to go through. So it sort of happened organically, but I have to say the first draft that I did was really cathartic, where I sort of had to had some more grieving to do about my sister, you know. So but that was really great and healing at the same time. That grief has taught me there's just so much love behind all of it.
That's right.
That's
and right. And I think why I chose the journaling meditations that follow every story of journaling meditation is I'm a big fan of journaling with my, having my teacher trainees or my students do a lot of journaling. I give them so many journaling meditations. They're probably like eye rolling right now. But it's so beautiful to process what's going on in your head out your pen or your pencil, just getting it out. And I mean, what I think is so phenomenal about your story in particular is this is what the magic of storytelling is here to provide, is the reminder that we all have this within us. We all have our own stories. I think sometimes people see people like in the limelight or other people who really struggle with this, or people whose struggles may not be so obvious, and they compare their own story, which is impossible because no one knows what it's like to be in our shoes, and we don't know what it's like to be in theirs either. It's impossible. That's part of our separateness in this reality, where we feel so connected in that oneness, but we are separate. And what I think is so cool about your story is that, and I'm not going to give too much away because it's so beautiful, and I mean, you got to read the story. It does talk about these several relationships in your core family and how all of them are inspiring you, and probably all inspired each other's as well, because that's what our personal story is, a gift. And each one of you wrote for this book. That's the gift that you're giving everybody.
Yeah. And I think they all have each of these stories. The thread is that they all found something that to keep them going, for their battle and what they had to survive, or what they had to deal with. So I think that's the one thing. They all had maybe a little bit of faith, or maybe it was prayer, or maybe it was going to work and losing yourself in your work, but there was something that gave them some sort of light and focus.
Absolutely. And that's what I definitely took away. One of the things I took away from your story is you mentioned like you really connect with meditation. That's a way that you really dive in and connect. And some of the other characters in your story connect and would say prayer, like as that their connection to their faith through prayer. And it, however we are devoting ourselves, whether we call it meditation or we call it prayer or we call it communion with others, coming together, or service work, or whatever it is, that faith piece is a huge part of our lessons. And it's kind of like that compass that is guiding us. And all the stories don't end in happily ever after. I mean, death is such a part of life. Even one of our stories out of the book, that's the title, like death is a part of life. And but it's how we relate to our existence through our faith, through whatever that means to you, however you practice that faith, that really can be the solid foundation to stand on when you're moving through something so challenging.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Actually, I have a friend who's to her job right now. She's trying to normalize death for people. So that's a whole nother conversation we can have. But yeah, death
A
is part of
lot.
life. Yeah, it's a hard one to face sometimes.
Yeah,
So
and I mean, I think back to what is it? I mean, I'm older. Like, I don't know if you remember Braveheart. You remember
oh
Braveheart when
yeah,
Mel
yeah,
Gibson,
yeah,
right? One of the quotes from that I just stuck with me whenever I saw that a few years ago was, "Every man dies, but not every man really lives." And that's been a really a strong guidepost for me of like, you know what, if I died tomorrow, or if my mother or my brother or somebody, if my best friend or my partner died tomorrow, what would it feel like? And I mean, that sounds a little morbid. I know not everybody kind of has that in the forefront of their minds, but I think it's really helped me to be present with the people in my life, and also to really soak up the preciousness of the the minute, this really small existence of us being human form, even with all of its pain, and with death being like, no one's getting out of that one. Like, good luck. A lot of people try, but the more we are intimately related to that reality, I feel the freer we are in that experience.
yeah, yeah. I feel that more and more with my daughter. Every moment that I spend with her, I'm
Mm,
able to like really to know that this moment is not here forever, and she's not going to be a kid forever. So I
yeah.
really trying to like enjoy the time that when we are together, and those special moments. So, because
It's
parenting has its
precious.
ups
And
and
she's
downs.
12.
She's 12, yes.
Oh my gosh,
But the
that's
specials of
that's
each
amazing.
phase, I often look back and think, oh, I missed the, when she was little, and now she's a little bit more sassy, but so smart and so funny, and just
Yeah.
really embracing those moments, because soon enough there'll be another phase that we'll move on to. But
Yeah. Yeah, something's about to start at 12, right? Like
yeah,
that's a
oh
huge
yeah,
shift,
it's
into
a whole new ball
identity
game.
and, relatedness to ego especially. But that's really cool. And to not be like, oh, well, it's sad that we couldn't, have that little precious time last forever. But then, as you just so beautifully said, like it's unfolding. It's what you're seeing now, and being present to whatever you're experiencing, even if
Yeah.
it's really tough. I mean, your story in the book is like, it's so beautiful. You tell very specific moments too, about the really painful realizations and getting the news and all of these different aspects of each of the character's journey. uh, I want to ask you, like, what if you wanted the readers of your story in the book to walk away with one message, like one really specific lesson, what would it be, and why is that important to you? Why was it important to you, and why is it important to people in general?
Yeah. I was thinking about this. I think one of the lessons is, as I said earlier, is trying to find those cracks of light, right? And sometimes that's really hard to do. And with my experience, I learned to try to find those cracks of light through
Mm,
meditation. And I only learned that by doing that, by practicing that. And that
yeah.
was the way I was able to find it. Um, so for me, it's about maybe slowing down when we're in a situation that feels overwhelming and being in that moment and feeling it, which can be really hard to face that moment too.
A lot of
Um,
people avoid that part. Yeah.
that's the hardest part, you
Hmm.
know. When I lost my sister, I was working at the healer at the time, who said to me, she's like, the only way out is through. And I thought, but I'm in it, but I really wasn't, facing that.
Yeah.
But it's hard. None of it is easy. And um, I've got, for my own self, I've got plenty of help, whether that's with yoga or through therapy,
Hmm.
medication where needed. Um, I think it's about the things that we've talked about, that through line, whether it's finding community, whether it is, perhaps it's prayer that is grounding for you, or meditation, or anything that brings you some sort of joy to help you work through that situation, you know.
Yeah,
And sometimes you're not going to feel joy right away. Sometimes it's moving to neutral before we find that joy, you know.
I love
um,
that. Yeah.
so um, I guess that's one of the things that I hope readers take away, you know. And this might sound sort of sappy, but love, love sort of exists without space and time,
Mhm.
and for me, after the loss of my sister and my father, those are things that I came to realize that they're always with me. Those memories, no one could ever take away from me, and they're precious. And those people are part of my life, and they influenced me in such a special way. So no one, that's mine. No one else could have that.
Yeah.
So
That's beautifully said because I mean that love that you share is eternal even after the physical is not there anymore. And to remember that that's in your heart and that's woven into the heart of that other person as well. That
absolutely,
stays with you, and that's a beautiful thing to focus on even after the passing of a loved one, is to remember that you can't hug them, you can't hold their hands, but you can still feel that connection, you can still feel the love in your heart and keep flexing those muscles.
yeah, 100%. And with time, for me, that has proved, that's been something that's proven for me. It's not so. Of course, I have my moments. I think we all do.
You're human.
Yeah,
Welcome to
we're
be
human.
human,
We're
right?
human. But to know that we are connected, even spiritually somehow,
Yeah, that's
it
right.
brings me great comfort. But
Yeah, it's the mystery. It's the
mhm.
mystery, and to fall in love with the mystery rather than needing to find the capital T truth that so many people fall into that trap of grasping this has to be the way, or I need to know. And the reality of being human is we don't have all the answers. And what do we do in that space of not knowing? So,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's not knowing, but it's that feeling, right? I think
yeah,
it's about feeling it in yourself. And that's not saying, okay, I'm going to find an answer and I feel this way and I know, therefore I know that. I think it's just like working with those emotions, and,
yeah.
and coming to some sort of maybe closure for oneself.
And being really specific about what it is you're believing, what it is you're putting your faith into, and does that work? Because some people put their faith into something that really isn't working for them. Very, I know
Sure,
I've recognized in
absolutely.
myself things that I was thinking or putting my faith or belief into. I'm like, this is actually self-sabotage, or this is, holding some weight on my head for my own growth, my own expansion by continuing this belief in maybe my own smallness or other people not liking me, or that matters. Like putting our faith into things. So even especially I think with death and with love, what we are choosing to constantly think over and over shapes our belief system. So we got to watch our brain and how we're relating to that, and that belief system shapes our reality of this world.
100%. I couldn't agree with you more, Anne. Yeah,
Mhm. So
definitely.
I want to ask you one final question. In writing stories, there what I didn't anticipate, like so many things about this book that I've just kind of been following the signs and the guideposts, is at the end of all of the 52 weeks of the book, there is a place for each reader to write their own story. There is some blank pages and some testimonials from authors about what it meant to them. So the last thing I want to ask you is, just on a more personal note, what did you get out of writing your story? What did you get out of it? Because you've given us so much, but what did you personally get out of it?
I mean, I think, first of all, I'm not a writer. When we
Can't
started,
tell
I
that.
never thought I'd
See,
write
that's a
anything
belief
different.
right there, right?
Exactly, right, right, right. Yeah, it's not something that I'm like, oh, I love to write. And
Yeah.
but since I've journaled a lot and really
Mm,
enjoy doing that, really enjoy doing that.
yeah.
But what did I get out for myself? I mean, I think, you know, I I didn't sit down and say I'm going to write about my strong family. You know, I didn't think I would, and then my connection to them and what that means. So that was like profound. writing that and coming to that conclusion about how proud I am to like be one of them and for
Yeah.
them to have loved me and to be part of their family. So that was something. And also to know that I can write, right? Like I had this belief that I couldn't, and I know that I certainly can now. So that was awesome.
Yeah. It's like everybody, that's beautiful. Everybody has a story, and journaling is a great way to practice us expressing our emotions, which are, you know, a bit of our compass to say, this is not necessarily, it doesn't paint reality. Like if we're upset about something, it doesn't mean that things are exactly how we're seeing them, but it can point to something's not okay or something is really resonating. And journaling, as since you're an avid longtime journaler, you have the practice of putting your emotions into story. And that's what I find so moving about this book is that all of the authors, and you're starting off with that first chapter, so you're a perfect example of this, is writing from the heart and sharing a story from the heart and being courageous to say this happened in my own life, to my own family and the people that I really care about. I mean, there are stories in this book that touch some very difficult topics and conversations and things that people really struggle with, suicide being one of them. And that's something that we've seen in the last couple of years really grow to an intense head of people really not knowing how to process their emotions. So I just want to thank you so much for contributing to this, for spending some time here just so people can see the face behind the story. And so if people want to follow you, which I highly recommend because she's an amazing teacher with so much to offer, they can read about your bio in the book, obviously, and find you that way. But what's your handles and your way that people can learn more about Jeannette?
Sure. My website is currently under construction, so that'll be coming soon. So you
That's
can
looking
watch me.
forward. We're looking forward to
Yeah,
that.
you can find me on Instagram. It's at Jeannette, Jnet Yogini at Instagram. So you can find me there. And
At
in the book,
Jeannette Yogini. Okay,
yes,
got it.
Jeannette Yogini.
Awesome. Yeah. Well,
Thank you
thank
so
you
much,
again. Yeah.
Anne-Margaret.
I cut
Pleasure.
you off. I cut you
That's
off.
okay. I was just going to
You're
thank
like,
you
blah,
so much
blah,
for
blah, blah.
being
All right,
part of
girl. Thank
this.
you so much. And just go to Raise the Vibration to find out more about the book. And we're just about to finish the final editing so that we can send it off to the publishers. But you're going to learn more about my strong family, Jeanette's personal story, in the very first chapter of the spring. So, yay. All right, girl. Thank you so much. Blessings, everybody. And until next time, keep raising the vibration, everyone.